people you meet are there for a reason. You know, it's not just, oh, you meet someone once and that's it. Like, some people, most people, are willing to help. You know, there's so many people that have made it so far in their life that they feel inclined to help the next generation, like paying it forward.
Hello, I'm Lindsey Akin, and I manage career services at the Department of Management Science and Engineering at Stanford University. Welcome to MS&E Stories and Voices, Graduating Student Profiles.
In this episode, we're featuring Joshua Chien, who goes by JC and is wrapping up his bachelor's degree with us. There are two main threads of JC's story: the academic side of his life and the athletic side of his life, specifically basketball. So we'll be bouncing backwards and forwards in our conversation between these two passions of his and talking about how he's used his wonderful sense of initiative and ability to build relationships to move up the court that has been his Stanford journey. JC, I'm fascinated to hear more about these two sides, and I'm sure our listeners are too. Can you give us an introduction to these two areas as they stood when you arrived at Stanford in autumn 2019?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm from Shanghai, China. It was very much you have to be well-rounded to get somewhere. You know, I loved basketball with a passion, and I knew how to get my academics up. I ended up at Stanford, which, you know, great opportunity.
Dream come true.
Dream come true, exactly. And I came in so set. I was like, I'm going to come into the CS and psych double major, and I'm going to do a music minor and do a master's in CS in AI. And I'm going to make an AI that can write music. Like, that was my goal. But then I took CS 106A, the first coding class, and I immediately knew that I did not want to do this for the rest of my life, or possibly ever.
Often that happens.
Exactly. Also, in freshman year, I joined acapella, so Fleet Street. It's the comedic acapella group. I did that first, so then I wanted to explore what I could do with basketball here, and I tried out for the club basketball team. But the club basketball team, their schedule was in conflict with the Fleet Street, my acapella schedule. And I decided that I valued Fleet Street more than the club basketball team. Mm-hmm. So during the second round of tryouts, one of the players pulled me aside and said, hey, like, if you don't do club, there's another opportunity for you that you might want to check out. And he was referring to being a practice player for the women's basketball team here at Stanford. It was a combination of fun and learning for me. After 1 week of practicing with them, and I went to play by myself, and it was a completely different experience already. I felt like I was equipped with different knowledge.
Yeah, so this is such a classic, best laid plans. You've got this academic plan that you had coming in, you've got this athletics plan that you've got coming in, and you want to do something to continue your music, do something that continues with this basketball love, and then that hadn't all worked out. So what happened next academically?
Yeah, so, I go home for Christmas. Both my dad and my older brother are engineers and computer scientists, so they convinced me to keep going in the CS department. I tried it, and then I dropped 106B 3 hours before the drop deadline in week 8 because I just knew that this is not for me. And then luckily, COVID came. My parents forced me to go home. It was a good break for me because I was in the intersection of, being in a country that I didn't know with very little idea what I was going to do in my next step academically.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to do CS anymore. I didn't think I wanted to do psychology by itself. I took spring off. My mother and I worked on trying to talk to as many professionals as possible in positions that I could see myself in. And it was all about learning about their life path, what they did for college, how they got to where they are. I keep hearing all these different majors, but the most I heard about was, something to do with business or something to do with organization. Then I had to choose a major because I knew I couldn't be on a leave of absence forever. Spent hours and hours on the Stanford websites looking at all these different majors that I could possibly be doing.
There's a lot of them to choose from.
Exactly. And I settled on MS&E because I felt MS&E was so well-rounded and versatile of a major that I felt like it's very hard to go wrong with MS&E. I knew what I didn't want to do, right? So with the, criteria of what I did want to do or I think I would like to do, MS&E just fit the profile.
So at that point, what were you thinking for kind of some of these future careers?
I knew I didn't want to work by myself in the sense that I wanted to work with people because I love interacting with people. That actually is pretty much the only requirement that I really have is that I want to work with people. I don't want to work as a scientist in a lab all day where I interact with chemicals or animals. I want to work with people. I want to like be building those relationships either in business or socially. I think working in solitary would make me go crazy.
I mean, hence all the team sports. And acapella, this is all very group activities. It just seems to be who you are.
Yeah. Funny thing is, when I went home for that year, you know, I took time off of acapella because the time zone was just not working. Like everybody else was in America. And me being in China, I had so much more free time because all my classes, when I started taking classes back at Stanford, they were online. And it would be from like midnight to 3 a.m.
That was that 2020-21
Yes, exactly.
academic year. Yeah.
And it worked out perfectly for me because I managed to choose all my classes in a cluster. So they would always be around midnight to 3. Wake up at 10, and then I had the whole day by myself to enjoy Shanghai, which at the time was open because we didn't have COVID at that time.
So this is when you were getting to talk to everybody.
Yes. And then I got into coaching basketball because I wanted to find a way to combine my passion of basketball for my passion with working with people. We're better to start than with kids. I actually coached basketball back in high school. I was one of the only people who were available to coach, and they wanted to restart the program. The same organization, so they called on me. I was like, yeah, I would love to. And I basically just took everything I learned from the women's basketball team and taught it to the kids. Yeah, and it was really fun to be able to share that passion with the next generation and then see them grow under your guidance. And even watching them now, like some of them are in great places in basketball and academically and like just in life. And it feels like I've left a mark on a next generation that hopefully can do better than me.
The pride that you have in what you've done there really comes through. It's like beautiful to see. Yeah. A perfect fit for you. So all's well that ends well then. You know, you figured out which major makes sense. Which of the focus areas did you then decide to settle into within MS&E?
Yeah, so when I first started MS&E, it was at the peak of COVID, and Shanghai, you know, obviously the cutting edge city is going to be different from the rest of the country. But Shanghai, you know, they had a 3-month lockdown where no one was allowed to leave their apartment. But when I flew back to China, it was at the end of that lockdown.
Okay.
And then I had a 2-week quarantine by myself in a hotel room after I landed. So when I got out of that, everyone was like free to roam the streets without a mask, you know? And it's hard to think that, you know, comparing to how US handled it, it's just almost a full year of lockdown where no open communication and all that. Another great tie-in is that track has the most on theory of managing people and managing organization. I was able to focus in on consultancy as a career path based off of that. I've taken a lot of great classes in that track. Like, for example, Kathleen Eisenhart, she teaches MS&E 180 on the theory of organizations. I felt like, you know, you pick up on things about how to run an organization when you work in close-knit groups or you work in companies interning, and you watch your managers and how they handle people. So you read about it, you see it and happen, but that class really formalized those theories and ideas.
It's definitely one that we hear a lot of good things about from all of the students.
For good reason. Yeah. You know, Eisenhart's a great teacher. Another one that I thought was cool was Melissa Valentine's MS&E 184. She taught the future of work. What was cool about that class is you get to innovate and try to make new things and think ahead. Yeah,
and then especially in that context of COVID when everything was changing so much.
Exactly.
There was just so many themes at that time that I'm sure made that class kind of an even richer experience than normally pre-COVID.
Yeah, big focus on work from home culture. And lastly, I think the coolest thing about MS&E, the major, is the senior project, because I saw it as basically we were a consulting team for 8 weeks, because you make a team, you choose a project, and then you just work on an issue for them. I think that's what consultants do, right? That really helped me build my skill sets in terms of not just tackling an issue and working with a team, but also how to communicate with clients and how to get their needs met. After a conversation with them, then you come back to your team and say, okay, what do they actually need and what they actually want? I think that is often overlooked in the first steps of learning about consulting, quote unquote. I just think, especially with choosing OTP, MS&E is so well-rounded. Like I learned so much, not just theory, but how to apply it and then doing it in real life was just so, eye-opening and made me feel ready for my next step after college.
Yeah. So you segued us in there. What is that next step that you're going to be doing?
Well, I'm graduating in less than a month, Oh, dear Lord.
Time flies.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been counting down, you know. I am working for this digital transformation consultancy called Magna Marketing. So Salesforce sells technology on how to build a digital database for a company and how to regulate, how to monitor that. But they don't actually teach those companies, like the clients, how to use them. The firm that I'm going into is one of those firms that, you know, get the clients that purchase technology, but we actually help them implement it, help them regulate it, and then we consult on issues regarding that. So, like, I'm already starting training for it. You know, learning technology is most important, but also learning how to manage a project, learning how to communicate with clients. Like, those are things that I already started to learn about during my senior project with MS&E. And again, I think it was a great lesson.
And your people skills there, because I mean, half of that with implementing a new technology in a company or an organization, to me always seems to be the change management side of things. This team of staff who are used to doing things one way, and now policies are changing, processes are changing, and some people love that and some people are really resistant to it.
Exactly, yeah.
This people interest that you have, I can see you being really successful with that understanding of people and ability to build relationships with them.
Yeah, I mean, tying in sports one more time, I worked with a lot of older people in sports. I try to bring the new innovative ideas or new ways to teach things into how I approached coaching. And when I was working with older people, there was often resistance on like, oh, this is not how I taught it, or this is not how I learned it back in the day. But, you know, it's not just knowing what you're talking about, but also persistence. And, you know, I trust that, you know, once you know your technique works, or once you know what you're bringing forward is valuable, and dare I say more valuable than what those people are bringing forward, you just have to be persistent and trust in yourself that you know what you're talking about, and have that confidence, and hopefully they can also be open-minded to see the difference and learn the new things.
Trust the relationship.
Exactly, yeah. It's a work-from-home environment, so I get to use some of the stuff I learned in that future work class. Building the relationships will be interesting from work from home, but I've actually decided to stay near campus because I was calling my aunt the other day, and she's worked in many different companies in different countries, and she was suggesting that, you know, I'm graduating, I'm starting a new job, it's work from home, and if I move somewhere where I have no support system.
And then that allows you to potentially stay involved in what's next with your basketball.
Yeah, and unfortunately with the women's basketball team, they only allow undergraduates to help in a manager/practice player aspect. But, you know, I'm definitely going to approach them and ask if there are any opportunities at all. This Friday is our last practice for me as a practice player and a manager. So, you know, I'm just thinking to myself, like, wow, the next time I'm here, it's going to be as a spectator, which is just, it's almost emotional because I've spent so many hours in Maples and in the practice gym with the team. And I've seen so many iterations of the team, and seen the coaches at work so many years. It's going to be interesting to depart from that. I sincerely think, you know, starting freshman year, I thought this, and until now, joining acapella and then joining the women's basketball team as a manager and practice player are the two best decisions I've made at Stanford, because it's just opened my eyes to so many different things, and I would not be the person I am without those two things. But, you know, I've been recruiting for the practice players and recruiting more people to join to help. So I feel like I'm leaving the organization with some sort of longer-term impact. Before I settled on consulting, I truly wanted to be a professional basketball coach. Whether that was starting in a high school or going to college or eventually, hopefully, ending up in the professional league. I truly wanted to explore that passion, but you know, unfortunately, there's financial constraints and responsibilities for me to support my family, and maybe that's in the cards down the line. So any sort of opportunity to help with coaching or to coach kids, just to keep that side of my brain on.
Yeah.
So if, you know, I ever get the opportunity to take a step in that direction, I want to be ready, because that is still my passion, and I don't see that going away.
The way that you talk with people and reach out and make those connections, as we've talked before today and today, that's something that I've been really impressed with you. You know, we tell people all the time, make connections with people, reach out to people. ask them if you can have this time to talk about what it is that they're doing and see how that all sounds for you, and you kind of lived that and really did that. Were there any particular conversations that really stood out to you, of an aha moment that you had?
This really comes from my mom. She is so good at managing her networks and really utilizing those connections. And I think she's the one that taught me this. During that COVID year when I was trying to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life, she really helped me look for people in her contact book. Like, what about this person? He did this, and this. I think watching her help me really form that idea, like, wow, like the people you meet are there for a reason. It's not just, you meet someone once and that's it. Like, most people are willing to help. There's so many people that have made it so far in their life that they feel inclined to help the next generation, like paying it forward. Yeah. When I realized that, it was so much easier for me to reach out to people, because the worst thing they can say is they don't have time, right?
Exactly.
If they say yes, that's a great opportunity for me. And so then not much to lose. Yeah, I really try to force myself to, reach out to people. Like, I worked the alumni weekend driving golf carts, and then, every ride I get one or two name business cards. And it's not even because they work in the field that I want to work in. It's because they want to help in any way possible. Like, one guy says, oh, my son works in consulting. Like, oh, I know this person who does this. They just want to help. Yeah. So it's I think the quicker for people to realize that and really utilize that, it's easier. Yeah.
I always feel like we all have something in common with everybody that's out there. And sometimes it's people that we know in common. Sometimes it's an interest. Or it's just taking that time to build that connection.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Like, even if it was just, the same school, like how I found the job I'm going into was literally I went on Indeed and I was looking at, consulting companies, and I found one that had one Stanford employee, like one employee that went to Stanford 3 years before me. And I found his email in the alumni database and I emailed him and I was like, hey, your company looks interesting. I would love to chat more about it. We chatted. He connected me to the COO. It's a small company. And then that's how I ended up getting the job. I think a lot of people either overthink it or, put pressure on themselves and think like, oh, like, what if this doesn't work? Like, I'll be embarrassed, blah, blah, blah. It's, before you reach out, you have nothing. If after you reach out, you have nothing, what did you lose, right?
Exactly.
You might get a job.
Yeah.
So I really encourage, like, in my Fleet Street group, I'm a senior and there's freshmen, there's sophomores who are looking for jobs or any kind of connection in the professional world. And every time we add an event with alumni or with, older, more successful business people, I really encourage them to give it an opportunity to connect and try to make connections and get business cards, and because that's how it works, right? Yeah. You're skipping all the application process to speak to those people directly, and making those connections is all about. It's going to help tremendously. Even if it doesn't get anywhere, it's good practice to get that.
Exactly. And you never know when it will, because they might introduce you to someone else.
Exactly.
And that's the person.
Yeah.
Where the magic happens.
Yeah.
I like to finish with a couple of extra questions. Your advice for people coming into the bachelor's program, in your case, that somebody else might not have already given them.
Don't be afraid to double down. Coming to Stanford especially, there's so much choice in what you could do. Or, there's so many good things, good resources for you to use. Don't be afraid to go, you know what? I really like this thing. I'm going to go see how far I can take this. You have so much time. There's so many resources out there for to use. Why not take advantage of something here and really see it through? I say, yeah, try new things, but once you find something you like, don't be afraid to just go hard and just push yourself and see how far you can take it.
That's awesome. And then your life maxim, that signature phrase of yours.
I really like this line, what if it turns out better than you think? Because especially, I think my generation, we are taught that we have to make careful decisions starting in high school, because everything, middle school impacts high school impacts college impacts work, and then your next job and everything that follows. I was having trouble with this too. It was hard for me to make big decisions or to commit to things that I thought would be long-term when there was a lot of uncertainty. I tell myself, what if it turns out better than I think it will? And if it does, that's perfect. I just gained something in my life that, is going to be with me down the road. If it doesn't, so what? Life is long.
But at least you tried and you have no
Exactly.
regrets. That's a good one to live by. And then the final one, 2 books and a podcast. So 2 books you think everybody should read. One of them MS&E or MS&E adjacent. And the other one, just for fun. Your favorite book that you would love to be able to have those connecting conversations with everyone about. And then finally a favorite podcast.
Yeah. There's a book that my dad bought me in middle school, and I reread over and over. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And it has taught me, every time I reread it, I learn something new about it because of my new experiences between my read-throughs. And it's all about how to make connections, how to grab interest in people, how to show interest in people. I think it's so much easier to approach it in the way of I'm making a friend and then we can help each other. This book explains it so well and gives so many, not just ideas, but methods of how to do it. And I think it's helpful for any age level. Another book I really liked was a book I read right before college. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's by Daniel Kahneman, who was a Stanford professor, I think. This is more on psychology. It focuses on 2 modes of thinking. So there's system 1, which is fast, instinctive and emotional, and system 2, which is slower, more deliberative and more logical. And this book also talks about his life, and he's such an interesting life. This book allows for me to self-reflect on how I think. And I think self-reflection is so important, not just for your profession or your academic, what your personality traits are and what your strengths and flaws are. I think self-reflection stems from learning about why people are who they are and learning more perspectives. The podcast, funny enough, being on a podcast right now, I'm actually not a podcast person because I don't really have that kind of time. I don't go anywhere.
You don't have the commute yet.
I don't have the commute yet, exactly. I do Instagram Reels. That's kind of my thing. I have these 2 accounts that I follow that I think I've learned a lot from. And the first one is a guy named Harlan Cohen, HarlanCohen. That's his Instagram handle. And I actually started following this person rather recently. He gives advice on college and high school. And he covers so many topics, like how to make friends, how to approach professors. He gives advice on how to ask for extensions from professors, how to ask someone out on a date. He covers so many different areas that I wish I knew about him earlier, because I've learned so many lessons the hard way that I feel like if I knew this existed, I would have had so much more guidance. Another person I follow on Instagram is this guy named Julian, I'm going to butcher his name, Julian de Medeiros, JulianDemedeiros. That's his Instagram handle. And he focuses on philosophy and theory. His recent content has been a lot more on love, which is something that I think about a lot. But he also talks about, theory of mind, theory of individual, just pretty much anything philosophical under the sun that you can think of. That also really helps me because it helps with my self-reflection. You can learn more about yourself by reflecting about your actions and your thoughts. Or you can combine that with the reflections of others.
Jesse, thank you so much for talking with us today. This has been so interesting. Your initiative in reaching out to people and building these relationships, it's clear that it's already served you so well, and will just continue to do so in the future.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of MS&E Stories and Voices, Graduating Student Profiles. This episode was produced and edited by me, Lindsey Akin, with editing help from Jim Fabry. Our music was composed and performed by Catherine Barron, another student in our master's program. Please be sure to subscribe to us on Spotify or whichever platform you're listening through. And check out our website at msne.stanford.edu. It's msande.stanford.edu. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.